Hi, I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association of Indiana. This is our second video for the second week of the Indiana General Assembly. So I wanted to give you a few updates on what happened this week. Another kind of interesting week. The legislature's kind of moving a little slow at the beginning, which is not unusual. But we had something happen not really related to this year's legislation, but related to legislation this past summer. Yesterday, the Indiana Supreme Court took up arguments over Senate Bill 1, which was heard this summer, as you remember, in the special session regarding abortion. The ACLU and Planned Parenthood filed to stop that law after it was passed, and we finally have the oral arguments yesterday as people kind of converged at the State House yesterday morning to protest and to hear what was going on at the oral arguments. Those arguments lasted for about an hour between Tom Fisher of the Indiana Attorney General's office and Ken Falk, both of the ACLU, both making their presentations for and against this law and for and against their case. There was about an hour-long debate for each side, total maybe 20 minutes on each side and some conversation in the middle. But kind of hard to read where the justices were on this. We have 5 Supreme Court justices. I think I could tell where 2 of them were. Not sure about another 2 and maybe a swing vote. There's no way to predict how this will go, but there were very good questions asked on both sides. I would say, even though I disagree with him, Ken Falk did a very good job in presenting his case regarding abortion, but I also felt like Tom Fisher with the AG's office did an extremely good job defending the law and also defending really why the legislature should have the right to protect life, why this is important, and reminding people this is not just about women's rights, it's also about the right of the unborn. And I thought he did a very good job of that, and certainly he had a lot of justices interested in his arguments. And so it's hard to predict what will happen. It'll be several months probably before we know what their ruling is, but certainly it's something we can pray about and pray that life is upheld, life is respected. One interesting thing about that is that the ACLU is arguing that the right to abortion is in Indiana's Constitution, and in that first section regarding life and liberty, that should allow a woman to have an abortion. What's interesting about that is our Constitution was adopted in 1851. In 1851, for 120 years thereafter, as well as before it was adopted, abortion was illegal in Indiana under most cases. So it's kind of hard to argue that our founders, who wrote our Constitution in 1851, felt that the right to liberty included the right to kill a child. So you have to kind of set aside historical or original intent to side with the ACLU's argument that our Constitution was meant to protect abortion, when in fact for 120 years up until Roe, abortion was illegal in Indiana. So we'll see. They'll kind of flush out where our Supreme Court is on original intent and some other arguments. But very interesting situation yesterday as I watched the oral arguments at the state Supreme Court. I want to mention a couple bills. A couple of them have gotten the attention of the media, so you may have read about them in your newspaper or heard about them. You have heard about them in our weekly email. Appreciate you reading those. But Senate Bill 12, I've mentioned, by Senator Jim Toms, which prohibits schools, or actually removes, as a matter of defense, schools being exempted from the crime of matter harmful to minors or distribution of matter harmful to minors, which is adult material, pornographic material. This is not a book banning bill, as some on the left are saying. This is a bill that would protect kids from pornography in schools and school libraries. The reason I want to mention that is we don't know if the Senate will hear that. They've passed it before, but the House has also passed it. We've just never had a situation where they both passed the bill at the same time and sent it to the governor. So I want to mention today that there's the exact same bill as Senate Bill 12 in the House, authored by Representative Becky Cash. That's House Bill 1130. So if you're interested in this issue, you can also call your state representative and say, please support House Bill 1130, as well as calling your state senator to ask for support for Senate Bill 12. Another bill of interest, and the media is starting to pick up on this a little bit too, is House Bill 1220. I think I've mentioned this twice in my email. It would simply ban gender reassignment surgeries for minor children. That's a life-altering decision children would make, and we believe that's something that should be held off at least until you're adult to make that decision. It allows children harmed by puberty-blocking drugs or a reassignment surgery to file a lawsuit for medical damages up to 20 years after the procedure. So that will be hotly contested, but we'll see what the legislature does with that. But there are multiple co-authors on the bill. It's possible that bill 1220 could get a hearing in the House. Another bill I want to mention, Senate Bill 354. I mentioned this in my email this week, and the media picked up on it. And it's a bill that simply says education matters. That's the title of the bill. Well, one of the things in that bill by Senator Jeff Rotz that's caught the media's attention is the fact that it would require schools to notify parents when a child identifies, changes pronouns, or identifies as another gender, or presents a different way in school, so the parents know that when their child goes to school, this is what they're doing. It's a different behavior in school. It's simply a parent's right to know that the child is presenting this way. We don't want schools to work against parents. We don't want schools to hide things from parents. There's a lot of talk out there about parental involvement. You can't have it both ways. You can't say parental involvement helps with educational attainment, parental involvement helps with students doing better academically, which it does, and we want parental involvement in academics, or we want parental involvement when it comes to selling tickets to raise money for the school band, or we want parental involvement in a football game. We want parents there, and then to say, but we're going to hide this part of this child's life from the parent. We don't want schools working against parents. If a child goes to school, changes their clothes to a different gender, and hides this from the parents, the schools need to let parents know. It doesn't say what the schools have to do. Doesn't say anything about instruction, doesn't say whether this is good or bad. It simply says the school should notify the parents that this is how their child is behaving, and let the parents address that if they want to. But there's no reason for a school to hide something like that from a parent. It's not the school's child, it's the parent's child. And parents need to be involved both in academics as well as decisions about sexual identity and things that important. So Senate Bill 354 is that bill, and it's titled Education Matters, but that's one of the four prongs of that bill. The others are regarding accreditation, things like that. It's kind of a multi-education bill in one bill. So that's 354. The last bill I want to mention is also kind of along that similar lines, I suppose. House Bill 1407, authored by Representative Dale DeVaughn. This is a basic parental rights bill. It simply says to courts, to the state as a matter of public policy, to state agencies, to schools, that parental rights are a fundamental right. Parents have the right to direct the upbringing of their children. They have the right to make health decisions for their children. Those types of things that courts have understood, courts have battled, but this simply sets a guideline saying parents have the fundamental right to do these things, to raise their children. Children belong to the parents, not to the state. So you wouldn't think that a bill that would be that controversial, but unfortunately it is. A lot of people don't believe in parental rights, but the government doesn't own children. Parents are responsible for children. You can't have it both ways. You can't punish a parent for being a bad parent and then punish them for not wanting to be a good parent, not wanting to be involved. Parents are responsible if their children do certain things. They're also responsible to provide and do things for children without government intervention. And raising your child, making decisions about their faith, about their health care is up to the parent. So several states have a law like this, but as a parental rights bill, I encourage you to read it. If you read it, you'll understand it better than I'm explaining it right now, but it's a very good bill, parental rights bill. That's House Bill 1407. So Senate Bill 12 and 1130 deal with matter harmful to minors. 1220, House Bill 1220, is a bill dealing with gender surgeries on minor children and puberty-blocking drugs, which are all experimental and have numerous risks to them. Senate Bill 354 is a bill requiring schools to notify parents about pronouns and gender identity if their child adopts that different than their biological and true sex. And then House Bill 1407 is a parental rights bill. So just those four things, plus also pray for the Supreme Court that they will rule, we would hope, in favor of life and uphold the bill and let the legislature do its job and rule that the bill that passed was constitutional and can go into place. So 5 things, 4 bills, and a prayer request. But I also want to thank you for joining us each week with these videos and reading the weekly email where we have a lot more material, a lot more information available. on a variety of bills. So if you don't receive our weekly email, please go to the link below to our website. There's also phone numbers for how to contact your legislator and a link to how to find your legislator. The best way to do that, I've given you the general phone numbers before: 232-9600 for the House, 317-232-9400 for the Senate. But actually, if you have the time to go to the General Assembly webpage, go to the Find Your Legislator link, enter your address. That will tell you exactly who your state representative and state senator is. It will give you a direct number to their legislative assistant, to their desk, where you can call them directly and not have to go through the switchboard, be put on hold. So take some time to find out who your legislator is. That way you can pray for them, you can thank them, and you can also call them when necessary on bills that matter to you. Well, thank you for joining us again. I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association. Until next week, thank you, and we'll be back then to update you on what happens at your state legislature.